The first house I ever bought, I didn't know a lot of things. I didn't know I was buying into an HOA. I didn't know how long it had been sitting on the market. And I definitely didn't know part of the property was about to be taken by eminent domain. But my agent knew. And here's the part that stuck with me over 20 years later. Nobody lied to me. Well, maybe. But more importantly, no one made sure I understood anything either. And that's when I realized the problem in real estate isn't the paperwork. It's what people don't say about the paperwork. Welcome back to Disclosures and Consequences, a podcast about the misunderstood, overlooked, and risky side of real estate. I'm your host, Jason Piske, real estate risk management expert, and not too ashamed to say, a victim of questionable ethics, purposeful omissions, and half-truths that colored my view on the real estate industry and real estate agents in general. Today's show is the origin episode of why I do this podcast, why I created my company House Owl, and I just hope my story can help others avoid some of the same pitfalls and be a cautionary tale to active agents as well. My experience buying my first home was painful because I did what most buyers do. I trusted the process. I assumed that if something mattered, someone would slow me down and explain. But too often, that's really not how it works. In real estate, most of the important information is technically there. It's in the disclosures, it's in the reports, it's buried somewhere in the stack of documents. But there's a huge difference between something being delivered and something being understood. And I didn't understand what I was signing. Not even close. Ultimately, I found out the day of closing that there was an active HOA after asking several times if there was one. Then, after I moved in, my next door neighbor told me the house had been empty for over a year. But we had been told it had only been 6 months. Then, 4 months after that, the city cut down all the trees on the back of the property to widen a road. An eminent domain claim that I was never informed about. My agent represented both sides in the transaction, and in my opinion, they were more concerned about finally selling the house than the person buying it. This experience changed how I looked at real estate transactions completely. Fast forward over 10 years, and I became a realtor myself. And I start seeing a hint of a similar pattern again and again. Good agents, hardworking agents, still missing things. Not because they were trying to hide anything, but because they were busy. Because they're juggling multiple transactions. Because this is just how the industry is set up. Buyers get a stack of documents, hundreds of pages deep, and the expectation is basically sign here, initial there, let me know if you have any questions. And most buyers have questions, but don't ask. Not because everything makes sense, but because they don't even know what to ask or where to begin. That's the gap. That's where things start to go wrong. As an agent, I made sure I took the time to read through the paperwork and explain what I could. I didn't always get it right, especially early on, but I learned and I got better and I became more productive. Then, one day, my whole world crashed around me that left me with hard choices. My wife was diagnosed with an incurable brain infection. She spent 6 months straight in the hospital and then came home and needed 24-hour care. Suddenly, my ability to be an active, effective agent was severely limited. I had to pivot to be able to stay in the industry I enjoy and help consumers buy and sell and still pay the bills. A realtor friend of mine who knew what was happening reached out to help reached out to me to help a startup company she had joined that would review the documents in a transaction independently, and I'd get paid a flat rate for each one I did. I took to it like a fish to water. But a year later, the company folded due to outside pressures. So, I created a company of my own with the same theme. Help buyers make informed decisions, help sellers properly disclose information about their home, and help agents avoid risk and simultaneously free themselves from the burden of paperwork and scale their business. So that's where House Owl came from. Not as another layer of paperwork, not as legal advice, and not to replace the agent, but as a valued part of the realtor's team that differentiates them from all other agents. It came from one simple idea. What if there was a step in the process where someone slowed everything down and made sure the client understood what they were signing? Not to delay closing, to make sure the timelines are met and the buyer, now fully informed, signs on their new home with confidence. Because right now, that step doesn't really exist. We have steps for disclosures, we have steps for inspections and signatures, but we don't have a step for understanding. And, as I pointed out in previous episodes, that's where the risk lives. Not just in what was disclosed, but in what wasn't understood. So House Owl is here to fill that gap, to walk through the documents with an extra set of eyes solely focused on explaining what actually matters and to give both the client and the agent something they don't always get in a transaction: clarity. But there's another side to this that agents care about just as much: time. Because every agent knows this part. You should be walking your clients through everything, but realistically, you've got multiple deals, constant calls, and hundreds of things pulling your attention. So, what ends up happening? You deliver the documents, you point out a few things, and you move on to the next fire. And it's not because you don't care. It's because there's only so many hours in a day. That's where House Owl changes the game. It takes that entire piece off your plate while actually doing it better and more thoroughly than most agents. So now you're not stuck choosing between giving great service and having time to grow your business. You get both. You protect your client, you protect yourself, and you free up more time to take on more deals without increasing your risk. That's not just support. That's how you scale. And this podcast came out of that same place because I keep seeing the same issues, the same patterns, the same "this probably won't be a problem" moments turning into very real problems later. Lawsuits, deals falling apart, clients feeling misled, agents blindsided, and most of it could have been prevented. Not by doing more paperwork, but by actually understanding the paperwork that's already there. So this podcast isn't about scaring you. It's about showing where deals quietly fall apart and how to protect yourself before they do. If you've ever handed over disclosures and thought, they'll figure it out, or told that's what you should do, this podcast is for you. And if you've ever had a deal come back later and you didn't see it coming, this podcast is definitely for you. Thank you for listening. I'm Jason Piske with House Owl. And remember, it's not the disclosures, it's the consequences. See you next time.